What's poppin', y'all? Something's been going on the Xverse, the Twitter hip hop universe, where the discussion came around mixtapes and albums, and it started off with this one tweet that reads as follows: "To me, quote, mixtape means you doing real deal non-album-ish like rapping over other people's instrumentals." And then this was followed up with, "Mixtape has come to mean don't scrutinize this collection of songs the way you would an album." I think this is a great topic to talk about because there's the business side of this, there's the perception side of this, and well, those are the main two sides. And what this guy's talking about is the perception side of things, which is accurate, but I also think there's the times that things are happening, because I held this point of view a while back, maybe 2018. I would say 2018, I definitely talked about this, and I shared the exact same point of view. However, things have changed a lot, and my perspective on it has shifted. So let's go to the business aspect of it first, right? There are, like, for example, NBA YoungBoy, people are like, yo, this guy's released 35 plus albums, and he released 20. How was he still on the deal with Atlantic Records? Well, so the business side of it, which is kind of where the artist gets screwed, is, if you drop a mixtape is just an album that doesn't count towards the contract, because most album deals were 5 album deals. I don't know. I haven't kept up with anything or like seen a record contract in at least 4 years. So maybe it's changed since then. A lot has changed in the industry since then. So before that, it was mostly 5 album deals. There are 1 album deals, but the standard recording contract was 5 albums. That's what YoungBoy was under. That's what a lot of these guys were under. And if they were releasing a project, like if you release too frequently, then they would just count something as a mixtape, an EP. Like for instance, Young Thug, he was signed and dropped at least 10 to 15 commercial projects. And I think he re-upped his deal maybe. I don't even know if he's done with the first 5 album deal yet, because technically the project that they said was his debut was So Much Fun. And that is what transitions us into my point, where mixtape is this, don't scrutinize this collection of songs, because the biggest offender here was Young Thug. And this is me being somebody that's messed with Young Thug's music heavy since the beginning, as in like 2014. Rich Gang, the tour, I would say after Stoner, I didn't really resonate with the song Stoner, but I had heard the song Stoner, and then following that up, like Danny Glover, things like that in the lead up to his duo with Rich Homie Quan. But when Young Thug finally started dropping, like for example, I Came From Nothing 1, 2, 3, these were all mixtapes, of course. Even like, I think it was the 1017 Thug was a mixtape too. Rich Gang, the tour was a mixtape too. And then you have Barter 6. And this is where I consider this to be the debut album of Young Thug. However, Young Thug and a couple of other people consider So Much Fun being his debut. And this is where I'm like, dog, come on, let's be real here. And Barter 6 was great. It was a great debut. Me personally, I still think Barter 6 is better than So Much Fun. But there was commercial reasons for this. I don't think Young Thug wanted the music to, don't judge this music the way that you would judge an album. I think it was more sales based, because for the majority of Young Thug's career in the beginning, his album sales were always the proportion of Young Thug's fame to his album sales, there was too large of a disparity. And it's not that I thought his fame was fake, it's just that like you look at the guy, like for example 6ix9ine, right? Like you look at 6ix9ine's fame versus his album sales, there's a big disparity. However, singles were different. He was more of a singles based artist, and he just put them together for albums. Even though one of the albums, I think it was Day 6ix9ine, was actually like quite solid, but it was solid as a collection of singles, not as like an official, the way that we look at an album-based artist like an Uzi or a Cardi. Regardless, Young Thug drops I'm Up, Slime Season 1, 2, 3, all of these different things. And this is original music, largely. So for you to be doing this for 4 or 5 years, dog, we have to be critical at that point. However, there was a shift in around 2016, which is this was the adoption of streaming. So a lot of people started leaving the piracy behind, which people are going back to, understandably so, back to organizing iTunes libraries, which I'll likely write about this instead of talk about this, which is people's consumption habits turning to the playlist via streaming, as opposed to before that, I think it was more album listening based versus playlist. Because I've still never made a playlist, but that's because I came up in the era where you were organizing iTunes libraries. It just gets messy if you're just downloading a single here, a single there. At that point, you might as well be listening to Tayo Cruz and Tyga consistently and Flo Rida than any albums-based artist. So this happens, and the adoption of streaming means that you can't get songs that you don't have cleared onto the streaming platform. And this goes back to like the origins, or not the popularization of the mixtape in the 90s and 2000s. A lot of it having to do with not just G-Unit mixtapes, but Lil Wayne as well, who took it to the next level, and that is rapping over other people's beats. This is what people have done. DaBaby has done it. Damn near everybody's done. Like you guys remember Versace? How many people did the Versace remix? How many people did the Don't Like remix? But this was a different time, because what would happen? The most popular sites to consume music at that time, it was datpiff.com, live mixtapes, hell, even SoundCloud to a degree, Spinrilla, YouTube, and even just like generally file sharing. Or sometimes these people had their own sites that you would go to, like Good Music, Good Fridays, it would drop on the Good Music site or the Yay site, and you would get it from there. Or it would be a popular blog that would post the audio track or embed the audio track onto their blog, whether it be Two Dope Boys or illroots.com. Shout out to illroots or illroots.co. Regardless, illroots, one of my favorite just brands in that era of time, because they just did events and all that other stuff and collaborated a lot with artists, music videos, things like that. So the consumption was different. Nowadays, you are limited if you do a mixtape like that. And by limited, I mean you're limited in distribution. It's come to the point where we're all listening on streaming. It's more of an inconvenience to go to. Where are you going to go to? These mixtape sites, nobody's really listening to them like that. Like the user base has shrunk. SoundCloud, yeah, it's still there. YouTube, yeah, it's still there. But then it begs the question of, okay, so if you as a rapper, you have a verse, are you going to record it over a song that you're not even going to make money off of? And then visuals are still very important. So you're going to create a visual and spend money and spend studio time and spend a verse or verses to make a song that people aren't going to be able to stream. And maybe they'll see it on YouTube, maybe they'll see it on Twitter, and it might even get taken down. Who knows? It's just low ROI. So that's why we haven't seen that type of a mixtape very often. Now, we do see that in freestyles. I think that's like the last remnants of that type of music being created. And DaBaby, he's been holding the fort on that as well. Yeah, Lil Wayne still does it here and there, but Lil Wayne's like, he is the legend when it comes to doing that. So it makes sense. And Lil Wayne is from an older generation. But the newest gen person we've seen do that is a DaBaby. And then we do have this newer gen that's doing it in a different way, where it's not even musical. Like they'll take the sound of the person and they'll take maybe like the visual inspirations with album covers or their quote unquote mixtape covers and Instagram posts and things like that. Like think of a Nine Vicious, for instance. Like you could see the clear Uzi, Young Thug, quote unquote paying homage, which has even become homage, however you want to pronounce it, that has become a point of contention that a lot of people have on certain underground artists, saying, hey, these guys are just leveraging the fame and the nostalgia for these other artists, and they're really not that talented themselves. And you can even see like the Tupac example with even Nine Vicious, where he took that inspiration for his project, but also with an NLE Choppa. So there's less of an incentive for that. And I will say Drake is also somebody that used it for More Life, which was a playlist. That was the first time we saw playlist instead of mixtape, because if you're reading this, it's too late. Now it's considered an album, but at the time it was considered a mixtape. And I just think it's because the reception was so positive that it got turned into an album. Dark Lane demo tapes was also somewhat of a mixtape, but I will give Drake a pass, which I didn't give him at the time, because looking back at it, the playlist makes sense. When you look at More Life and you look at that era of Drake, it's like an organization of songs and sounds that he was listening to, and he used that and Dark Lane demo tapes as an opportunity to put forth artists and let people know, hey, this is the vibe that I'm messing with personally out of my own headphones. And then the reason why I say that is, and I'm giving him grace here before all the Drake haters come, is because with the dance album, he could have said that was a playlist or something like that, but it wasn't. That was his attempt at doing a dance album. or a house music album. And he labeled that an album. So he took the criticism for that. He took that on the chin, which a lot of people have come around to liking that album. I think I need to go back to it again because my opinions on house music have shifted a little bit, which is generally I'm not really the biggest house fan, a house/techno fan, but there were a couple of tracks on that project, but I still consider it the worst project to date. And I've listened to it once this year. Of course, listened to it more in the years prior. So with artists, we also have an example of the commercial expectations is what they're scared about, because an artist knows when they drop an album, like for example, Offset. Offset just dropped the tape. And people are like trashing the tape and saying, man, this didn't even debut. Or I think I reported it too. It didn't even debut in the top 200. Well, the reason it didn't debut on the top 200 and we got answers from Offset is that this was supposed to be his last project to get out of his deal. Offset just dropped an album a couple of months ago that did like 30 something K first week, which was solid. That's the song that had Bodies with JID. It was a solid project, solid album, whole rollout behind it. And that takes preparation. That takes a bunch of meetings. That takes organizing a ton of press. That takes doing a lot of behind the scenes things that contribute to the attention on the album. And obviously that leads to the amount of consumption, which is how sales are calculated right now. So that's why there's such a disparity between that album and the mixtape. And the time span, like 2 months or 3 months between those two, you're not going to release another full album rollout just after you finished your first one. Even the label's not even doing that, even if this wasn't an attempt to get out of your deal. So when somebody like Offset is using that as an explanation, it makes sense. And also, I think we should allow this because it means that the artist is willing to drop more music. And don't we all want that? Like Jack Boys, for example, with Travis Scott, like Travis Scott, the collab mixtape. I think that's, or the collab album with Quavo, which I always say sucked. I think that's one of the least referenced albums ever for the hype that it had at the time. And I know there will be people in the comments, which feel free to voice your opinion down there, that are like, nah, bro, I love that project, because I always get comments like that whenever I mention something like this. But yeah, I think there's a lot of context that needs to be looked into when judging a mixtape, because the commercial mixtape became a thing after, I would say, 2015. And streaming is what made the commercial mixtape a thing. Because, hey, you have a collection of original songs. Why wouldn't you release them to be able to make money off of them? And as a whole, rappers just producers became more cognizant of getting screwed by samples and not clearing certain things, that they said, you know what, like, let's make beats instead of just throwing beats on for the rapper to just hop on. Let's do something a little bit different and have original songs. And also, back then, when you're rapping on other people's beats, you gotta rap. Rapping has not become the number one quality anymore, or it has not been for quite a while. So what are you gonna do? You might as well just have your own type of beats and style to where you can lay down your melodies and show off your flows, as opposed to being judged on your performance on a beat that everyone else is using. And we did see something like this. Like, for example, the last time I think I can remember that there was a lot of remixes. Like, the really, really big was the beatbox era, the Spot 'em Got 'em song. That was like a TikTok song. And that was big. A lot of people were dropping beatbox remixes. And also, remixing, especially if you're like a smaller artist, you don't want to get the reputation of being the remixing type of artist. So I think all of those things have contributed to the decline of the mixtape that we had come to know, which is rapping on other people's beats. But let me know what you guys think about this in the comments. Like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell if you enjoyed. And I'm going to see you on the next one.